Welcome to Scriptural Science, a presentation of Truth and Life Institute, Boston, Massachusetts, and Oba, Nigeria. The following is a subsection of the book, Life is a Journey in God Through God, written and published by Ifeanyi Chukwujima, scriptural scientist and a servant of God. This subsection's ID is Journey in God, Book 32:1. Here is the most ancient human history in vivid colors. Adam had his first son when he was 130 years old. He lived for 800 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 930 years on the earth. Adam had no human father because he was the first human being on the earth. Human beings had been on the earth 930 years at the time of Adam's death. Adam died 726 years before the flood. Seth coexisted with Adam. Adam was 130 years old when Seth was born, and Seth died 614 years before the flood. Enosh coexisted with Adam. Adam was 235 years old when Enosh was born, and Enosh died 516 years before the flood. Kenan coexisted with Adam. Adam was 325 years old when Kenan was born, and Kenan died 421 years before the flood. Mahalalel coexisted with Adam. Adam was 395 years old when Mahalalel was born, and Mahalalel died 366 years before the flood. Jared coexisted with Adam. Adam was 460 years old when Jared was born, and Jared died 234 years before the flood. Enoch coexisted with Adam. Adam was 622 years old when Enoch was born, and Enoch died 669 years before the flood. Methuselah coexisted with Adam. Adam was 687 years old when Methuselah was born, and Methuselah died on the year of the flood. Lamech coexisted with Adam. Adam was 874 years old when Lamech was born, and Lamech died 5 years before the flood. Note 1. Adam coexisted with Noah's father, Lamech, for 56 years. Before Adam died at the age of 930 years, Adam was 874 years old when Lamech was born. Note 2. These people are parts of the same family and interacted with one another, just as Jacob, Israel, and his clan interacted amongst themselves. Therefore, they knew one another's entire history and one another's respective deals with God. What God did with Abraham and the children of Israel was pick up from where God stopped with Adam and his clan, the patriarchs who we are discussing here. Note 3. The only patriarch out of the 10 patriarchs listed in Genesis 5 verses 1 to 32, who Adam did not get to see, was Noah. Note 4. Lamech had his son, Noah, 126 years after Adam had died, and prayed that God might through Noah bring a relief to mankind, to ease the difficulties which Adam's curse had placed on the entire world. Seth had his first son when he was 105 years old. He lived for 807 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 912 years on the earth. And he lived 112 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 1,042 years at the time of Seth's death. Enosh coexisted with Seth. Seth was 105 years old when Enosh was born. Kenan coexisted with Seth. Seth was 195 years old when Kenan was born. Mahalalel coexisted with Seth. Seth was 265 years old when Mahalalel was born. Jared coexisted with Seth. Seth was 330 years old when Jared was born. Enoch coexisted with Seth. Seth was 492 years old when Enoch was born. Methuselah coexisted with Seth. Seth was 557 years old when Methuselah was born. Lamech coexisted with Seth. Seth was 744 years old when Lamech was born. Seth died 14 years before Noah was born. Seth coexisted 168 years with Noah's father. Enosh had his first son when he was 90 years old. He lived for 815 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 905 years on the earth, and he lived 98 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 1,140 years at the time of Enosh's death. Kenan coexisted with Enosh. Enosh was 90 years old when Kenan was born. Mahalalel coexisted with Enosh. Enosh was 160 years old when Mahalalel was born. Jared coexisted with Enosh. Enosh was 225 years old when Jared was born. Enoch coexisted with Enosh. Enosh was 387 years old when Enoch was born. Methuselah coexisted with Enosh. Enosh was 452 years old when Methuselah was born. Lamech coexisted with Enosh. Enosh was 639 years old when Lamech was born. Noah coexisted with Enosh. Enosh was 821 years old when Noah was born. Note: Enosh died 84 years after Noah was born. Kenan had his first son when he was 70 years old. He lived for 840 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 910 years on the earth, and he lived 95 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 1,235 years at the time of Kenan's death. Mahalalel coexisted with Kenan. Kenan was 70 years old when Mahalalel was born. Jared coexisted with Kenan. Kenan was 135 years old when Jared was born. Enoch coexisted with Kenan. Kenan was 297 years old when Enoch was born. Methuselah coexisted with Kenan. Kenan was 362 years old when Methuselah was born. Lamech coexisted with Kenan. Kenan was 549 years old when Lamech was born. Noah coexisted with Kenan. Kenan was 731 years old when Noah was born. Note: Kenan died 179 years after Noah was born. Mahalalel had his first son when he was 65 years old. He lived for 830 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 895 years on the earth. And he lived 55 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 1,290 years at the time of Mahalalel's death. Jared coexisted with Mahalalel. Mahalalel was 65 years old when Jared was born. Enoch coexisted with Mahalalel. Mahalalel was 227 years old when Enoch was born. Methuselah coexisted with Mahalalel. Mahalalel was 292 years old when Methuselah was born. Lamech coexisted with Mahalalel. Mahalalel was 479 years old when Lamech was born. Noah coexisted with Mahalalel. Mahalalel was 661 years old when Noah was born. Note: Mahalalel died 234 years after Noah was born. Jared had his first son when he was 162 years old. He lived for 800 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 962 years on the earth. And he lived 132 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 1,422 years at the time of Jared's death. Enoch coexisted with Jared. Jared was 162 years old when Enoch was born. Methuselah coexisted with Jared. Jared was 227 years old when Methuselah was born. Lamech coexisted with Jared. Jared was 414 years old when Lamech was born. Noah coexisted with Jared. Jared was 596 years old when Noah was born. 596 Note: Jared died 366 years after Noah was born. Enoch had his first son when he was 65 years old. He lived for 300 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 365 years on the earth. Enoch was outlived by his father. He died 435 years before his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 987 years at the time of Enoch's death. Methuselah coexisted with Enoch. Enoch was 65 years old when Methuselah was born. Lamech coexisted with Enoch. Enoch was 252 years old when Lamech was born. Notes: Enoch died 57 years after the death of Adam and 69 years before Noah was born. So Enoch coexisted with every one of the first 10 patriarchs of the Bible except Noah. Methuselah had his first son when he was 187 years old. He lived for 782 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 969 years on the earth. And he lived 669 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 1,656 years at the time of Methuselah's death. Lamech coexisted with Methuselah. Methuselah was 187 years old when Lamech was born. Noah coexisted with Methuselah. Methuselah was 369 years old when Noah was born. Notes: Methuselah died in the same year as the Great Flood, most likely before the flood. Methuselah died 600 years after Noah was born. Lamech had his first son when he was 182 years old. He lived for 595 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 777 years on the earth. Lamech died 5 years before his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 1,651 years at the time of Lamech's death. Noah coexisted with Lamech until 5 years before the flood, when Lamech died. Lamech was 182 years old when Noah was born. Note 1. Noah had his first son 95 years before his father, Lamech, died. Therefore, Noah's father interacted with Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Japheth, and Ham, before he died 5 years prior to the great flood that destroyed the world. Note 2. Lamech died 5 years before the great flood, 5 years before his father, Methuselah, died. Noah had his first son when he was 500 years old. He lived for 450 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 950 years on the earth. And he lived 355 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 2,006 years at the time of Noah's death. Noah was 600 years old at the time of the Great Flood. Great Flood human beings had been on the earth 1,656 years at the time of the Great Flood. The Great Flood ended the 3rd age of the earth and began the 4th age of the earth. Note 1. The Great Flood marked the beginning of the 4th age of the earth, which will continue till the end of time. Revelation 22 verse 5. The 3rd age of the earth was characterized with indescribable hardship that put a chokehold on the entire earth and everything on the earth. As God had announced in his rebuke of Adam, "Cursed is the ground because of you." Genesis 3 verse 17. The original sin unleashed curse upon the face of the earth and progressively devastated the earth and all life on the earth, up to the Great Flood. Note 2. Sin continued with mankind into the 4th age of the earth. Ham's was the first recorded sin in the Bible after the Great Flood. Ham's sin resulted in Noah cursing Canaan, Ham's first son. The rain that destroyed the earth was the very first rain ever on the earth. That first rain pounded the earth relentlessly for 40 days and 40 nights. And combined with the great torrent of water that shut up from the earth's crust, the rain gave rise to the Great Flood, which covered over the entire earth and every one of its mountains, baptizing the earth. But while the entire earth's surface received the baptism, the humans that were saved in the flood, Noah and his family, were tucked away in the ark, away from that water of baptism. That seclusion denied the saved humans and their animal companions in the ark the same baptism that the earth received from the Great Flood. It was no surprise, therefore, that sin followed the human beings into the world after the flood. That was why God finally sent John the Baptist to individually baptize the human beings with water in preparation for the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, to make the human beings ready to receive Christ's saving grace. God does not do anything without a purpose. God executes carefully orchestrated plans, which were made well in advance of the events that require the plans. And because the humans are receiving water baptism, just as the Great Flood baptized the surface of the earth, spiritual baptism through Christ's sacrifice at the cross became available to all mankind. Further, Jesus Christ, in his 3 days of natural death, descended to the lower regions of the earth and freed the spirits of those who were dead before Christ's death on the cross at Calvary to enable them to rise and be judged on the last day. Here is the Bible saying it. What does he ascended mean except that he also descended to the lower earthly regions? He who descended is the very one who ascended higher than all the heavens to fill the whole universe. Ephesians 4 verses 4 to 10. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit. 19. After being made alive, he went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits. 20. To those who were disobedient long ago when God waited patiently in the days of Noah while the ark was being built. In it only a few people, 8 in all, were saved through water. 1 Peter 3 verses 18 to 20. Note 3. The people of Noah's time who were destroyed in the great flood ignored Noah and his warnings about impending flood, partly because they never experienced rain in their lifetime, and so refused to believe that water can fall from the sky and drown the entire earth. They were intelligent beings like we all are today, trusting their reasoning and life experiences over God's prophecies. The fact that there had not been a single incident of rain on the earth since human beings were placed on the earth made it difficult for the people of that time to see how it was even possible that water could fall from the sky in such an overwhelming volume that would swallow up the entire earth and its mountains. They doubted that it was possible, just as we doubt today that the universe and its stars and planets would, suddenly, roll away as prophesied in the book of Revelation. It was not the power of flood in sweeping things away that the people of Noah's time were doubtful of, because they were familiar with rivers and the devastating force of water. It was water falling from the sky and reaching the kind of flood levels which Noah was predicting that they could not see happening, and so dismissed Noah's warning as the illusion of a madman. People lived extremely long in those days, several hundred years apiece. Therefore, they had so much life experiences and knew a whole lot more than we think they did. Knowledge is cumulative. Therefore, the longer an observable person lives, the more experiences they accumulate. Those people from very long ago dismissed the possibility that water could come down from the sky and overwhelm them, just like we today discount the chance of sudden terror raining from the sky and destroying us and the earth. Luke 17 verses 22 to 30. And he said to the disciples, "The days are coming when you will desire to see one of the days of the Son of Man, and you will not see it." 23. And they will say to you, "Lo, there," or "Lo, here." Do not go, do not follow them. 24. For as the lightning flashes and lights up the sky from one side to the other, so will the Son of Man be in his day. 25. But first he must suffer many things and be rejected by this generation. 26. As it was in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days of the Son of Man. 27. They ate, they drank, they married, they were given in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. 28. Likewise, as it was in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. 29. But on the day when Lot went out from Sodom, fire and brimstone rained from heaven and destroyed them all. 30. So will it be on the day when the Son of Man is revealed. Luke 17 verses 22 to 30 RSVC. Our current extensive knowledge and understanding of the outer space convince us that such Bible talk is foolishness, just as the people of Noah's time were convinced that water falling from the sky and drowning the earth and everything in it was Noah's foolish talk. Our ignorance of the hidden truths in the Bible stories is giving us false confidence about the sufficiency of our knowledge and our technologies in protect ourselves against sudden terrors from the sky. We must remember that God rules the sky. Terror rained from the sky in Noah's world and destroyed the world. Terror rained on Sodom and Gomorrah at Lot's time and totally vaporized the two cities and all that lived in them. Jesus Christ personally warns that terror would once again rain on this world from the sky when we feel secure, and that terror would utterly devastate all of us who do not believe in him. It will come to pass. Note 4. At the end of time, the conditions on the earth will return to the conditions on the earth at the end of the first age of the earth. The sun, the moon, the stars, and the universe will all be reabsorbed by God through implosion. And the earth and heaven, God's dwelling place, will once again share one common space, with God and his Son Jesus Christ majestically seated on their thrones in the clouds of heaven. Everybody on the earth will see God and Jesus Christ clearly, as both majestically sit on their thrones in heaven, because of God's and Christ's sheer physical sizes. Even though the distance between us and them would remain what it is today, that distance would appear much shorter because of the infinite physical sizes of God and his Christ. And God's majestic radiance will become the light of the unified heaven and earth, as it was in day 1 to day 3 of creation, in Genesis 1 verses 3 to 13. And that majestic radiance of God and his Christ would be coming from two infinitely large beings who stretch from one end of the sky to the other end of the sky across the whole earth, making it possible for all the inhabitants of the earth to see them at the same moment in time, wherever people are on the planet Earth. Luke 17 verse 24 RSVC 4 as the lightning flashes and lights up the sky from one side to the other. So will the Son of Man be in his day. Lightning flashes from one end of the sky to the other and disappears as quickly as it came. And the flash of one lightning does not fill the entire sky over the entire earth, except the sky of the area that is having stormy weather at the time. But when the Son of Man comes into visibility in the sky, he will be visible in the entire sky across the entire world the same instant. And he will permanently remain visible through all eternity. That is the new heaven which God promises to bring as a replacement for our current universe, which was unfolded over the earth on day 4 of creation and would be lifted off the earth on the last day, to make the sky over the earth one continuum with God's dwelling place. Here is that unification of the earth and God's dwelling place in the Bible. The current obscurity of God's dwelling place from the earth by our current universe has been removed by God, and God and his Christ, majestically sitting on their thrones in heaven, have come into full view of everybody on the earth. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. 2. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. 3. And I heard a great voice from the throne saying, Behold, the dwelling of God is with men. He will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be with them. For he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. 5. And he who sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. Also he said, Write this, for these words are trustworthy and true. 6. And he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water without price from the fountain of the water of life. 7. He who conquers shall have this heritage, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. 8. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the polluted, as for murderers, fornicators, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their lot shall be in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. 9. Then came one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues, and spoke to me, saying, Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. 10. And in the Spirit he carried me away to a great, high mountain, and showed me the holy city Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God, 11 having the glory of God, its radiance like a most rare jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. 12. It had a great, high wall, with 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and on the gates the names of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel were inscribed. 13 on the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, on the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. 14. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. 15. And he who talked to me had a measuring rod of gold to measure the city and its gates and walls. 16. The city lies 4 square, its length the same as its breadth, and he measured the city with his rod, 12,000 stadia. Its length and breadth and height are equal. 17, he also measured its wall, 144 cubits by a man's measure, that is, an angel's. 18, the wall was built of jasper, while the city was pure gold, clear as glass. 19, the foundations of the wall of the city were adorned with every jewel. The first was jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, 20 the fifth onyx, the sixth carnelian, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, the 12th amethyst. 21, and the 12 gates were 12 pearls, each of the gates made of a single pearl, and the street of the city was pure gold, transparent as glass. 22, and I saw no temple in the city, for its temple is the Lord God the Almighty and the Lamb. 23, and the city has none of sun or moon to shine upon it, for the glory of God is its light, and its lamp is the Lamb. 24, by its light shall the nations walk, and the kings of the earth shall bring their glory into it. 25, and its gates shall never be shut by day, and there shall be no night there. 26, they shall bring into it the glory and the honor of the nations. 27, but nothing unclean shall enter it, nor anyone who practices abomination or falsehood, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. Revelation 21 verses 1 to 27 RSVC. The very last time the earth had such a view of God and God's dwelling place was at the end of day 3 of creation in Genesis. What was had become once again. And this time, it will stay that way for all eternity. When human scientists read a passage such as this in the Bible, they begin to construct all kinds of mathematical hypotheses as to how that is even possible. And when they exhaust their strength and could not see the mathematical possibility, they rule it crazy talk, and the church leaders call it an allegory, just to appease the scientific world. The problem, however, is not in their mathematics. The problem is in their conception of what was said in the Bible. There is a perfect reason why God chose to make himself invisible to the human beings, to destroy pride and ego, because pride leads to wickedness. God is indeed an infinite being whose size is unfathomable, as the Bible says. That is why he describes us as worms and nothing. But mankind, who likes to be in control of everything around him, draws his conclusions based on what the sheer power of his mind could estimate or compute, not realizing that he is dealing with a being of infinite wisdom, who knows every inkling of the human mind because he made the human mind and could tell where the mind is going way in advance. This being, therefore, decided that unless mankind rids himself of pride, which is cancerous, mankind has no chance at the truth at all. And it has been working due to God's infinite wisdom. That is why any human being who sets pride aside and follow the lead of his spirit easily uncovers the truth of the scriptures. Only those who humble themselves to learn see God. When you see God, you see life for what life really is. And those who humble themselves see God way before the day of God's great reveal that is bound to come the last day. All the people that live on the new earth will finally see and drink from the crystal water of creation, which was pushed to the outer perimeters of space when God sunk in space inside the water and stretched space out. That water was taken from the river of crystal clear water, which was described in Revelation 22 verse 1 and Ezekiel 28 verse 2. Pride is blinding. Pride robs mankind of the truth of the scriptures, thus, the truth of everything. Pride makes mankind a slave to his own mind. This is the reason why we age. We are enslaved to our own minds, because the mind is punitive. If you doubt it, look around you. If you pay attention, you will notice that mentally disabled people age slower than people with the so-called normal minds. Mentally disabled people do not make themselves slaves to their own minds. They freely laugh and play and never worry about the so-called age-appropriate behaviors or how anyone may judge them. They follow their spirits and do whatever comes naturally to them. They live free of the strangulation of their own thoughts and prejudices. They simply love and wish the world would love them back and not act so mean all the time. Note 5. Human science is in great error by making the conclusion that the universe originated from some chanced explosion from which everything else progressed. Water and the earth were created by God before God's creation account of Genesis chapter 1, and before the universe was created by God on day 4 of creation. In Genesis chapter 1, God did not bother to tell us how he created both the water and the formless volcanic earth from grace. He later told us in Job 38 that when he created the water of creation, that the water appeared with unprecedented surge, which he easily contained with his free Spirit, grace. The Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the deep, Genesis 1 verse 2. Here is that additional information from the book of Job, which preceded Genesis 1 verse 1. God's free spirit shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb. 9 when God made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness. 10 when God fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place. 11 when God said, "This far you may come and no farther. Here is where your proud waves halt." Job 38 verses 8 to 11. Revelation 22 verse 1 and Ezekiel 28 verse 2 told us that the water of creation, which was in the hollow of God's hand, was scooped up by God from the crystal clear river of the water of life, which proceeds from the throne of God in heaven. The great flood human beings had been on the earth 1,656 years at the time of the great flood. God sent the first rain on the earth 1,656 years after God placed Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. That first rain caused the great flood, with which God destroyed everything that sin had brought onto the earth and covered them over with so much earth, and they became current day's archaeological relics that are dug up every now and then. The first rain renewed the earth and made the earth fertile once again, with more streams, rivers, lakes, ponds, and springs to water the earth, and supply portable water to the human beings and animals. Japheth was 100 at the time of the great flood. Ham's age was not stated in the Bible. Shem had his first son when he was 100 years old. He lived for 500 years. After he had his first son, he died after he had lived 600 years on the earth, and he lived 152 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 2,158 years at the time of Shem's death. Shem was 98 years old when the flood subsided. Genesis 11 verse 10. Shem lived another 401 years after the continental divide. Shem was 390 years old when Abraham was born. He lived for another 210 years before dying at the age of 600 years. Arphaxad had his first son when he was 35 years old. He lived for 403 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 438 years on the earth, and he died 62 years before his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 2,096 years at the time of Arphaxad's death. Arphaxad died 62 years before his father. Shem. Shelah had his first son. He lived for 403. He died after he had, and he lived 30 years after his father as human. Beings had been on the earth 2,126 years. Shelah died 32 years before his grandfather, Shem, and 30 years after his own father, Arphaxad. When he was 30 years old. Years after he had his first son. Lived 433 years on the earth. Death. The time of Shelah's death. Eber had his first son when he was 34 years old. He lived for 430 years. After he had his first son. He died after he had lived 464 years on the earth, and he lived 61 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 2,187 years at the time of Eber's death. Eber died 29 years after his great-grandfather. Shem. Peleg had his first son when he was 30 years old. He lived for 209 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 239 years on the earth, and he died 191 years before his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 1996 years at the time of Peleg's death. Humans have existed on the earth for 1,757 years before Peleg was born. And Peleg lived for a total of 239 years and died. Peleg died when humans have been on the earth for 1996 years. Noah was still alive when the earth was divided into continents at the time of Peleg, because at Noah's death, total human existence on the earth was 2006 years, 10 years past death of Peleg. Noah lived for 249 years after continental divide the earth became divided into continents. The earth was divided into continents 1,757 years after human beings had been on the earth. Peleg's birth must had coincided with this event. For God to use Peleg's birth to mark this momentous event, the Bible says that during Peleg's time, the earth was divided. And Peleg was born 101 years after the Great Flood. The continental divide, therefore, took place 101 years after the Great Flood. The year of the continental divide, which marked 1,757 years of total human existence on the earth, is a multiple of 251 sevens. 7 is a very powerful number with God and is everywhere throughout the Bible. The earth was divided from a single landmass into the continents and islands that we have today, although the boundaries of the continents and the islands have since been reshaped by climate and flooding. Conditions on the earth. Peleg had a brother called Joktan, but the Bible did not say that the earth was divided in the days of the two brothers. Rather, the Bible says that the earth was divided in the days of Peleg, meaning that the division of the earth had happened before Joktan was born, but while Peleg had not been given a name, and so was named to mark that event of astronomical proportions. In the days of can mean either somebody's entire lifetime or a few days that spans an event in a person's life. Babies are named within days of their births. Peleg's could not have been any different. Here are examples from the Bible about in the days of sometimes meaning several days, and at others a long span. One example is Genesis 30:14, and Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest, and found mandrakes in the field, and brought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, Give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes. Another example is Exodus 2:11, and it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. And yet another example is 2 Kings 8:20, in his days Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah, and made a king over themselves. Ru had his first son when he was 32 years old. He lived for 207 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 239 years on the earth, and he lived 30 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 26 years at the time of Ru's death. Ru died 132 years before Shem died. Serug had his first son when he was 30 years old. He lived for 200 years. After he had his first son, he died after he had lived 230 years on the earth, and he lived 23 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 2049 years at the time of Serug's death. Serug died 109 years before Shem died. Nahor had his first son when he was 29 years old. He lived for 119 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 148 years on the earth, and he died 52 years before his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 1997 years at the time of Nahor's death. Nahor died 1 year after Peleg died, which is 161 years before Shem died, and 9 years before Noah died. Terah had his first son when he was 70 years. He lived for 135 years. After he had his first, he died after he had lived 205 years on the earth. And he lived 86 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 83 years at the time of Terah's death. Shem lived for another 75 years after Terah had died in Haran. Old son. Abraham had his first son when he was 100 years old. He lived for 75 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 175 years on the earth. And he lived 40 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 2,123 years at the time of Abraham's death. Abraham most likely interacted with Shem before Abraham, his wife. Lot and Abraham's father left the Ur of the Chaldeans for Haran, on their way to Canaan. Shem lived for another 35 years after Abraham had died in Canaan. Abraham was called by God to leave his native land, Ur of the Chaldeans, and go to the land which God would show him. Abraham was 75 years. The year Abraham was called by God marked 2023 years of total human existence on the planet Earth. That year, 2023, is exactly divisible by 7, which will come as no surprise to anyone who knows the power of numbers with God. 2023 is 289 sevens. Isaac had his first son when he was 60 years old. He lived for 120 years after he had his first son. He died after he had lived 180 years on the earth, and he lived 105 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 2,228 years at the time of Isaac's death. Isaac coexisted with Shem for 110 years. However, the two men were separated from each other by geography, since Abraham had moved to Canaan as God had commanded Abraham to do. Isaac was born in Canaan. Jacob he died after he had lived 147 years on the earth, and he lived 27 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 2,255 years at the time of Jacob's death. Jacob lived in Egypt for 17 years until his death. Jacob migrated to Egypt when mankind's total existence on the earth was 2,255 to 17 equals 2,238 years. Both Jacob and Esau coexisted with Shem for 50 long years before Shem died. At the birth of Jacob and Esau, mankind had been on the earth for a total of 2,108 years. Jacob's first 11 sons were born within 13 years while Jacob was living in Laban's household. That means that Reuben, Jacob's eldest son, was about 12 years older than Joseph. Jacob's 11th son, Joseph, became ruler in Egypt. He died after he had lived 110 years on the earth, and he lived 54 years after his father's death. Human beings had been on the earth 2,309 years at the time of when Joseph became ruler in Egypt. All 12 sons of Jacob died in Egypt and were buried there. Exodus 1 verse 6. Only Joseph's bones were taken at the Exodus and buried in Canaan. Jacob was 130 years old when he and his household migrated into Egypt, when only 2 years had passed in the 7-year famine. Genesis 45 verse 6. Therefore, Joseph was appointed by Pharaoh to the governorship of Egypt 9 years before Jacob's migration to Egypt, because Joseph was 30 years old at the time of his appointment to the governorship of Egypt. Therefore, at the time Jacob and his household migrated to Egypt, Joseph was 39 years old. Jacob died at the age of 147 after staying in Egypt 17 years. On the year of Jacob's death, Joseph was 39 plus 17 is equal to 56 years old. Joseph, therefore, lived another 110 to 56 equals 54 years after the death of his father, Jacob. In other words, Joseph was born when his father Jacob was 130 to 39 equals 91 years old. Moses died after he had lived 120 years on the earth. Human beings had been on the earth 2,708 years at the time of Moses' death. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. Exodus 7 verse 7. If Moses was 80 years old when he and his brother Aaron spoke to the Pharaoh of Egypt to let the children of Israel go, and the Israelites were in Egypt for 430 years, Moses was therefore born. 2,668 minus 80 is equal to 2,588, when total human existence on the earth was 2,588 years. At Moses' death, total human existence on the earth was 2,708 years. We can use the Jewish calendar to fill the rest of the activities that are important to God with respect to human journey through life/salvation. The month the Israelites were freed from slavery in Egypt marked the first month of the Jewish calendar. The Jewish calendar started counting time from creation, meaning that 2016 is the 5,776th years from God's creation of the earth and the universe, and everything in them. August 2016 is Tammuz Tammuz AV, 5776 AV, 5776. Note that the year 2016 is divisible by 7 to yield 288 sevens. The Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years, entering the promised land rights after the death of Moses at 2,708 years of total human existence on the earth. Exodus human beings had been on the earth 2,668 years at the time of the Exodus of the Israelites from Egypt. 2668 years of total human existence on the earth is obtained from 2238 years of total human existence on the earth when Jacob migrated to Egypt, plus the 430 years the Israelites were in Egypt before the Exodus. Saul became king. Human beings had been on the earth 3,062 years at the time Saul became the first king of Israel. Saul was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned over Israel 42 years. 1 Samuel 13 verse 1. David became king. Human beings had been on the earth 3,104 years at the time David became the king of Israel. King David ruled over Judah for 40 years, and all Israel for 38 years, before he was succeeded by Solomon. Solomon became king. Human beings had been on the earth 3,144 years at the time Solomon became the king of Israel. Solomon started building the temple on his 4th year as king of Israel, 476 years after the Israelites came out of slavery in Egypt. Construction of temple began. Human beings had been on the earth 3,148 years at the time Solomon started building the temple of God at Jerusalem. Solomon started to build the temple 480 years after the Israelites came out of Egypt. Temple completed. Human beings had been on the earth 3,155 years at the time Solomon finished building the temple of God at Jerusalem. The building of the temple at Jerusalem took King Solomon 7 years to finish. Here is the chronology of human lineage from God through Adam, Noah, Abraham, to Jesus Christ. Now Jesus himself was about 30 years old when he began his ministry. He was the son, so it was thought, of Joseph, the son of Heli, 24 the son of Matthat, the son of Levi, the son of Melchi, the son of Janai, the son of Joseph, 25 the son of Mattathias, the son of Amos, the son of Nahum, the son of Esli, the son of Nagai, 26 the son of Math, the son of Mattathias, the son of Simein, the son of Josek, the son of Joda, 27 the son of Jonan, the son of Risa, the son of Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, the son of Neri, 28 the son of Melchi, the son of Addi, the son of Kosam, the son of Elmadam, the son of Er, 29 the son of Joshua, the son of Eleazar, the son of Joram, the son of Matthat, the son of Levi, 30 the son of Simeon, the son of Judah, the son of Joseph, the son of Jonam, the son of Eliakim, 31 the son of Maliah, the son of Menah, the son of Mattatha, the son of Nathan, the son of David, 32 the son of Jesse, the son of Obed, the son of Boaz, the son of Salmon, the son of Nashon, 33 the son of Amminadab, the son of Ram, the son of Hezron, the son of Perez, the son of Judah, 34 the son of Jacob, the son of Isaac, the son of Abraham, the son of Terah, the son of Nahor, 35 the son of Serug, the son of Ru, the son of Peleg, the son of Eber, the son of Shelah, 36 the son of Cainan, the son of Arphaxad, the son of Shem, the son of Noah, the son of Lamech, 37 the son of Methuselah, the son of Enoch, the son of Jared, the son of Mahalalel, the son of Kenan, 38 the son of Enosh, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, the son of God. Luke 3 verses 23 to 38. I personally computed all the dates shown in the preceding tables in accordance with what is recorded in the Bible. I spent a reasonable amount of time computing the dates and reviewing my computations for accuracy. I am sure that the Jewish calendar took into consideration a lot of things that pertain to the Jewish culture and religion, which I am not privy to, while my computation is based solely on the information presented in modern revisions of the Bible. For more on the timelines of the Bible events, there are lots of internet sources that are helpful. Simply Google Jewish calendar and you will get a list of them. The following is a little clip of an internet presentation on the Bible's truth about the age of the earth and the universe, and the human science's claim about the age of the earth and the universe. The year number on the Jewish calendar represents the number of years since creation, calculated by adding up the ages of people in the Bible back to the time of creation. However, this does not necessarily mean that the universe has existed for only 5,700 years, as we understand years. Many Orthodox Jews will readily acknowledge that the first 6 days of creation are not necessarily 24-hour days. Indeed, a 24-hour day would be meaningless until the creation of the sun on the fourth day. For a fascinating, albeit somewhat defensive, article by a nuclear physicist showing how Einstein's theory of relativity sheds light on the correspondence between the Torah's age of the universe and the age ascertained by science, see the age of the universe. http://www.jewfaq.org/calendar.htm http. It is very disturbing that the author addresses the human science's claim of billions of years of the universe existence as ascertained and cast a huge cloud of doubt on God's record of God's own creation in the book of Genesis. Many Orthodox Jews will readily acknowledge that the first 6 days of creation are not necessarily 24-hour days. Indeed, a 24-hour day would be meaningless until the creation of the sun on the fourth day. When the author claims, indeed, a 24-hour day would be meaningless until the creation of the sun on the fourth day, he is categorically calling God a liar. God is not a liar. Anyone who contradicts God is deceiving themselves. The science of life must be taken together as in the minor sciences we are pursuing today that bloat our egos. The science of life is not inferior to any human science. Rather, the science of life is the grandest and most precision science that there is. And the Bible is the only scientific authority on the science of everything, including life and creation. That you do not understand the science of life does not tarnish that precision science of God. Every human being has a responsibility to themselves to learn and retain what God is teaching them, and not to impose their own wills and their own interpretations on God. God gives his knowledge freely to all, without discrimination or favoritism. And he expects every human being to believe his truth or draw his wrath upon themselves for refusing to execute the infinitely advanced science that is their life, in accordance with God's stipulated steps in the Bible. Isaiah 55 verses 8 to 11. A student does not grade the teacher. If any one of these critics of God and the Bible misleads their own children by giving them conflicting and confusing information about the way the children should go in life, they are failing in the responsibilities which God had assigned to them, to lead their children in the way of truth and righteousness. But if they are, in fact, giving to their respective children clear and concise instructions on the way they should go in life, they are convicting themselves of disobedience and slander of God. God loves and cherishes all human beings because all are children of God. God does not mislead his children. He remained inside every human being, both the righteous and the arrogant, to guide and direct them through life's daunting choices. One may accept God's guide or refuse God's guide because God has given us all the freedom to choose. That many choose to use that freedom to insult God and deceive many human beings in the name of science and knowledge is unfortunate. Below, see God works all human intelligence in real time. Figure 1. God remains in every human being he has created and continues in real time to direct their every thought, nudging them in the way they should go, in every decision point. Yes is obedience of God, and no is disobedience of God. Unbeknown to those who deceive many in the name of science, science is the law of God built on God's. Wisdom, 1 Timothy 1 verse 8. We know that the law is good if one uses it properly. There are commands of God in the Bible which stem from God's wisdom, the law. And there are also commands of God in the Bible which were built on God's wisdom and constitute the proper way to remain in the law science. How then can science proceed without God? Impossible. That mankind was unable to rightly divide the word of truth, 2 Timothy 2 verse 15 KJV, but instead chose to separate the proper way to remain in the law science from the law and call the proper way to remain in the law science does not stop science from remaining the exclusive property of God. It is God who created law, and it is also God who created science, the proper way to remain in the law, and gave both to mankind as the Bible. That is why science emerged from within the church, Revelation 13 verse 11, and secular historical accounts. Figure 2. This is what freedom is all about. You submit to God if you want to, or reject God's direction if you so desire. But you will have to live with the consequences of your decision. Medical science can get you some reprieve, but only for a while, because the loss of grace you will continue to suffer will eventually overwhelm your mind and your body beyond God's mercy. That is medical science. Anyone who chooses to fight God is only hurting themselves and those others who are willing to be deceived by their misinformation. Nothing changes the truth of God. Our only contribution to the things that happen in our lives is a yes to God or a no to God. And God does the rest for us. Our yes and our no are used in God's infinitely advanced cloud technology intelligence system as its machine language, as depicted in the illustration above. The Bible is God's gift of love to all mankind. The Bible is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. There is no truth outside the Bible. The Bible is all knowledge, the depository of both the science of the truth of everything in existence, as well as the law of the truth of everything in existence. Turning your back on the Bible means turning your back on your very own life, because there is no other way to do life apart from the Bible. The choice is yours. Intellectual discourses, such as our internet clip above, which says that the Bible truth about the age of the earth and the universe is metaphorical, and that the human science's contradiction of that Bible truth is the ascertained truth, do not only undermine the truth, they lead to their destruction. It is extremely bothersome to hear people who profess to know the power of God to say that they do not believe that each of the 6 days of creations in Genesis was literal 24-hour day. Is there any other kind of day on the planet Earth in which every high noon is followed by the evening and then the morning? Genesis 1:5, 8, 13, 19, 23, 31. Is there any planet anywhere in the universe on which some of its one days last millions of years, while the others are simply one regular day? For every one of the 6 days of creation, God never failed to state that the high noon was followed by evening, and then the morning, Genesis 1:5, 8, 13, 19, 23, 31, clearly demonstrating that he knew. That counterfeit scientists and false prophets would be minting their own truths to lead people away from their God. Figure 3. Truth is both law and science intertwined. Here is Bible's documentation of what comprised day 1 through day 6 of creation. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. For God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. 5. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. Genesis 1 verse 5. And there was evening, and there was morning a second day. Genesis 1 verse 8. 13. And there was evening, and there was morning a third day. Genesis 1 verse 13. 19. And there was evening, and there was morning a fourth day. Genesis 1 verse 19. 23. And there was evening, and there was morning a fifth day. Genesis 1 verse 23. 31. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning a sixth day. Genesis 1 verse 31. Does anyone see any difference in what constituted day 1 through day 3 versus what constituted day 4 through day 6? God knows human craftiness and our penchant for making things up just to suit our own purposes. That is why God meticulously documented all his creations on each given day, referencing the noon, the evening, and the morning on every one of the 6 days. To make it impossible for counterfeiters to doctor, God called light to shine on the earth on both day 1, Genesis 1 verse 3, and day 4, Genesis 1 verse 14, clearly demonstrating that he made the earth, Genesis 1 verses 2 to 13. Before he made the universe, the sun, and all the celestial bodies, Genesis 1 verses 14 to 19. That way, nobody can switch them up in some twisted philosophical or scientific hypothesis. This is the reason why the world scientists stayed clear of the Bible account of creation completely. God had made it impossible for any human being to switch up his creation activities and get away with it. He shuts everybody out of placing his creations on whatever day or billions of years they wanted. He forces everyone to accept his truth as recorded in the Bible or show themselves to be liars. Anyone who believes human science's creation timeline and at the same time professes to believe the Bible's creation timeline has invented some brilliant way to distort their own mind. It is either the Bible is true or human science is true. The two positions are irreconcilable. Day 1 through day 6 of creation are each a literal 24-hour day, take it or leave it. Anybody who confesses faith in God through the Bible but does not believe that it took God only 6 literal Earth days to create the Earth, the universe, and everything inside them, as recorded in the Bible, has no understanding of the God they profess. This is exactly what the Bible was alluding to when the Bible declared that God's people are perishing for lack of knowledge. Hosea 4 verse 6. Jesus Christ commanded Apostle John in the book of Revelation, "Do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. 11 Let the evildoers still do evil, and the filthy still be filthy, and the righteous still do right, and the holy still be holy." Revelation 22 verses 10 to 11. And he was only echoing what he had explained to his apostles in the following passage in the Bible when he was in the world with them. People who truly know God are not confounded by parables, because it was given to them to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, Matthew 13 verse 11. But those who bring God to their level of understanding are always greatly hampered by the Bible's pattern of speech, because God has denied them the ability to comprehend the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, Matthew 13 verses 11 to 15. Then the disciples came and said to him, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" 11 And he answered them, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given." 12 For to him who has will more be given, and he will have abundance, but from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. 13 This is the reason why I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. 14 With them indeed is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which says, "You shall indeed hear, but never understand, and you shall indeed see, but never perceive." 15 For this people's heart has grown dull, and their ears are heavy of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should perceive with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn for me to heal them. 16 But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. 17 Truly, I say to you, many prophets and righteous men longed to see what you see, and did not see it, and to hear what you hear, and did not hear it. Matthew 13 verses 10 to 17. It is not aliens that God and his Christ were talking about here. They were talking about the smart people of the world who, in their own minds, have surpassed God in both knowledge and understanding. They read the Bible not so that they can believe what is written, but so that they can attack what is written. Although they see everything that is written, they walk away and make up their own truths, putting them in layers and shrouding them in mysticism to create maximum impact on the people, and it has been working for them. And many, who are called by the name of God, priests, rabbi, the religious, etc., are increasing joining them in the desecration of the name of God in the name of science. To these smart people of the world, God cannot even tell his own story correctly, hence, their compulsion to tell the world what really happened. The knowledge of darkness is truly as deep and intoxicating as the knowledge of light is high and uplifting. And God makes sure that these people do not turn from their misunderstanding. Matthew 13 verse 15. There is no doubt that mankind brings everything down to its intellectual level. It is not that mankind cannot understand things for what they are, but only so that mankind would exert its own control over whatever it is, because mankind always likes to be in charge, even in charge of mankind's creator. That is a real shame. No wonder God is still bent on destroying a world he made so perfectly and was satisfied with. After he had made it, God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. Genesis 1 verse 31. Human natural knowledge has immensely advanced, such that mankind should retrace its steps to the beginning and clean up the mistakes which mankind made in mankind's efforts to remain in control of everything. God is infinitely able. The 6 days of creation are literal days, not some fancy metaphor, designed to prevent mankind from counting time correctly. God did not start time in the middle of the night when there was pitch darkness. Otherwise, the start of time would not have been followed by evening, and then morning, the next day, Genesis 1:5, 8, 13, 19, 23, 31. Time started exactly at high noon, with God's shining of light on the earth, Genesis 1 verse 3. And because the earth started rotating at the impingement on the earth of God's radiant energies, which the visible light was only one component of, the very longitude on the earth that was directly perpendicular to the focus of God, which was the source of the light, instantly saw high noon. As the earth continued to rotate, evening eventually replaced high noon on that longitude of light's first impingement on the earth. With further rotation of the earth, morning came around, and finally, another high noon moved in to start the second day, Genesis 1 verse 5. This is the reason why the Bible concludes each day of creation with, and there was evening, and there was morning the day. Genesis 1 verse 5, Genesis 1 verse 8, Genesis 1 verse 13, Genesis 1 verse 19, Genesis 1 verse 23, and Genesis 1 verse 31. This is not redundancy, but pure scientific precision, designed into the Bible's creation narrative by God to open mankind's eyes as to the scientific precision of every word of God in the Bible. It is therefore imperative that everyone who is called by the name of God divorce themselves from the ignorance of their own minds and the misinformation of their education and embrace the entire Word of God in the Bible with confidence and utter conviction. God is not a God of errors and guesswork. God is the God of precision, the God whose infinite wisdom, knowledge, and understanding guarantees that he gets it right the very first time. The way we trust our earthly fathers never to mislead or deceive us in anything is the same way we must each trust God, even more, never to mislead or deceive any of us in anything, because God is infinitely more trustworthy than our earthly fathers and mothers. That is why Jesus Christ commanded in the Bible. So I say to you, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened to you. 10 For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. 11 Which of you fathers, if your son asks for a fish, will give him a snake instead? 12 Or if asks for an egg, will give him a scorpion? 13 If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give the Holy Spirit to those who ask him? Luke 11 verses 9 to 13. Our problem is that we never trust God. Therefore, we hardly wait on God to lead us into the truth. And you all heard it from Jesus himself. What we receive when we trust God fully and confidently asks God for his guidance is God's Holy Spirit, Luke 11 verse 13, his free spirit, grace, who fully saturates the earth and the universe and everything inside of them. Trusting every word of God was the one factor that distinguished Moses from the rest of the Israelites. And Moses' trust of God helped Moses retain God's righteousness when the rest of the Israelites were in sin, like in the golden calf fiasco, in which even Aaron was deceived with the rest of the people. Moses trusted God totally. His trust of God allowed him to remain totally humble because he knew that everything he had heard from God was the only truth under heaven. His trust of God made him follow God's every instruction, except for the one time he hit the rock out of anger, instead of speaking to the rock, as he was instructed to do by God. God is not interested in anyone's interpretation of his words except his. Each of the 6 days of creation was 24 hours long. None was 1 second more than the other. to be sure that no one gets away with adding or subtracting anything from his account of all creations, which he had handed down to mankind through Moses, God was sure to tabulate all creations, day by day, starting point to each end point. And to demonstrate that the day never lost a beat, God switched from supporting the earth with his direct radiant energies, day 1 through day 3, to supporting the earth with radiant energies from the sun, from day 4 of creation to the present time. God, in other words, was demonstrating to mankind the seamless nature of his creations at the same time he was giving mankind signs of things to come. Mankind has come to believe that the mind's very limited capability is all mankind needs to be able to solve all the problems in the world. What mankind has failed to ask itself is, what created all the problems in the first place? Did some aliens come into the world and create the problems for mankind? Or did mankind's incompetence and greed create all the problems in the first place? How can the same thing that created the problems become the solutions to the problems? How can anyone who knows only a fraction of 4% of something be so confident about 100% of that thing? Is somebody hiding something from somebody here because everything the world scientists know to date about the universe is a small fraction of the 4% of the universe, which they can attest to? That explains why the world governments have so many classified information that they keep away from the people. God designed the human life, created it, commissioned it, and continues to uphold it, manage it, maintain it, monitor, and control it. He gave the Bible to every human being to guide them through life and living. God did not hold anything back. Rather, he gave to everyone clear and concise instructions on what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and what to expect when they do it, because God has 100% knowledge of every human being need for life and living. And God continues, in real time, to guide everyone that listens and obeys his commands through life. God is not restricted by nature. He is above nature because it is his presence inside nature that upholds, works, and controls all of nature. God has no classified information, which only a few people are privy to. Whatever information any human being is allowed by God to have is also made available to all other human beings who humble themselves, Luke 8 verse 10. Every human being is welcome to seek information from God, and all are guaranteed God's personal attention and response, Matthew 7 verses 7 to 12. God continues to this day to uphold, work, manage, invigorate, renew, and control every single aspect of nature, the seen and the unseen. God continually fully saturates nature by incessantly moving through all of nature at the speed of God, which is infinitely faster than the speed of light. We know it from physics that no imparted force could be as great as the force that imparted it. God is infinite energy. God created all things on the earth and in the universe, and assigned to each all their respective characteristics. God is the immovable mover who makes all things and assigned to all things whatever we have observed in them. And in real time, God maintains those qualities in every one of those things, everywhere in the world and in the universe. Nothing on the earth or the universe escapes God's scrutiny, because God remains an integral part of every creation of his, from the minutest to the largest. Therefore, we can titillate the world with our knowledge of science and our geniuses, and fill ourselves with great bravado for our unmatched brilliance, yet we know nothing, because we have failed to embrace God's righteousness. God is all knowledge. He is the beginning of knowledge, the continuation of knowledge, and the end of knowledge. If you do not know God, you know absolutely nothing. Proverbs 9 verse 10 KJV. And it is not me just saying it. It is the truth of the matter and the absolute truth of everything. John 15 verse 5. That is the ambiguity of knowledge. Psalm 111 verse 10 KJV. You can fill your brain with so much information and still know nothing. Proverbs 1 verse 7 KJV. Because your mind is a spirit, which is only authentic when it is in God's hand, and misleading when it is in the devil's hand. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. John 15 verse 4. Therefore, without God's authentication of your knowledge, you have no knowledge. The God who created the universe, the earth, and everything in them is infinitely supreme. God is infinite energy, plus the sum of all the energies that exist everywhere and in everything on the earth and in the universe, visible and invisible, known and unknown, enthalpies and entropies. He is God, and there is no other. Isaiah 45, verse 18. God gives His Holy Spirit only to those who totally trust God, John 1, verse 16, who have confidence that they will receive from God what they ask from God. To those who fervently do what is necessary and go to wherever they must, in order to receive what they are asking for, Luke 11, verses 9 to 13. The following passage from the book of James explains why we continue to fall short on our requests from God. When you ask, you do not receive, because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. James 4, verse 3. Know God and execute the infinitely advanced science that is your life, in accordance with the commands of God in the Holy Bible. That is your whole duty in life. Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13 KJV. The intimacy in all human relationships mimics and points to the intimacy of each human being with space and with God. We are all created into space, to be eternally one with space, in perfect unity. Violating any intimate human relationship is violating intimate relationship with space, because the tie that binds people in every human relationship anywhere on the earth is God's free spirit, grace, the same tie that binds every human being to space. See figures 74, 79, 77, 78. This is the reason why every breach in God-commissioned human intimate relationships is a breach against God, hence, against you, you only, have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight, so you are right in your verdict and justified when you judge. Psalm 51, verse 4 NIV. See also, for whosoever shall do the will of my Father which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother. Matthew 12, verse 50. The Bible calls all spiritual breaches prostitution, Hosea 4, verses 1 to 19, giving the intimacy of one's soul to other than God in any of God-commissioned human relationships. God created all relationships to be steadfast and unbroken because they all impact space. See figures 230 and 231 and 232 and 224. That is why the Bible commands not to arouse love until love is ready, Songs 8:4 RSC. That is, until you can fully and unwaveringly commit your heart to love. All intimacies everywhere in the world are spiritual, like all genes are spiritual. It is the physical intimacies that we see, like the biological genes, and react to due to the limitedness of human senses. All human beings everywhere are one with space, Colossians 1 verses 16 to 17. All human beings who are obedient to God are one with God, and one with Jesus Christ, who is one with God, John 10 verse 30. Hence, in that day you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you, John 14 verse 20. Disobedience of God is like an astronaut who went on spacewalk, not attached to the spaceship. How could God's original creations, including human beings, have been perfect, Genesis 1 verse 31, if there were any rooms in any of them for improvements and advancement, especially God's most wonderfully and fearfully created human beings? What the so-called human advancements have achieved for mankind through all human civilizations is degrade the human person from God's perfection, Genesis 1 verse 31, to worthlessness, Matthew 5 verse 13, and extinction. Revelation 19 verses 11 to 21, and Revelation 20 verses 1 to 15.